So following on from the previous lecture, where we were finding how we could get values for our JavaScript from the HTML forms themselves using .value. So just to revise very quickly, what we were doing is in our inputs, our text inputs, we created an ID. With that ID, in our JavaScript, we could then say document.getElement.byId, and then just at the end we put .value, and that gets whatever the user has currently put into that text box. So just below we're going to create a very basic calculator where the user can put in two numbers, and essentially our script will multiply them together. So I'm just going to put in a break down here, and then h2 saying enter, let's do multiplying calculator. Then a paragraph saying enter two numbers, and we will return the value. Okay, do an exclamation mark. So now let's create a form. So that's the first thing we want to do, right? We don't need to worry about any of this stuff for now, because we basically want to get just two inputs in which the user can put in their numbers. So type equals text. Let's put a little paragraph saying number 1. Then I can just copy and paste that. Maybe a bit nicer than that though. Fantastic. This can be number 2. Now let's not forget, the important thing is we need to create IDs for both of these. So I'm going to put ID equals num1. Then here I'm going to put a second ID called num2. Okay, so now that we have the IDs, we've created a form with two inputs, and we've given each of those inputs an ID. Okay, so now what we want to do is get that information. So what I'm going to do down here is I'm just going to create another function. While I'm at it, actually, I'm going to create a button. I'm just going to call that calculate. So obviously I need to give this a function to call, so I'm just going to say on click. So this is when the user clicks it. Let's go for something called calculate. That'll be the name of the function. So now we just create this function here. So function calculate. Then within that we just need to get the values basically. So we just want to get two variables. But let's just go for, call them 1 and 2. So our first variable is going to be, we just have to document. As always, we want to get the element by the ID. We'll get the first one, which is num1. Then all we have to do afterwards is just put dot value. That's all we have to do. Perfect. And then we can get the second one as well, just by creating another variable called 2, and we just have to change this to num2, which is the ID of the second text input. Then simply we just do var3 is equal to 1 times 2. So we're just multiplying those two variables together now, and then let's alert saying your result is, then outside that we add in 3. Okay, so let's give it a try, see if it's working, and then we'll go over it once together. So 6 and 90. Your result is 540. Let's do one a bit more simple. Let's do 6 times 2, which should be 12. Okay, fantastic. So that seems to be working. Let's just go over how we've managed to make that work. Essentially what we've done is we've created a form, and we've had two text inputs within that, giving them both an ID, and then a button below with an on-click, and that calls the function. Within that function, all we're doing is we're creating two new variables, and all we have to do is get our element by ID, like we always do, and then at the end we just do dot value, and that gives us the value or whatever the user has put in. And then all I've done is just to illustrate to you that once we have those values, we can manipulate them however we want. So here we're just multiplying them together into a separate variable and then outputting it. So this is a very basic way just to illustrate to you guys that it's so powerful that we can now get the user input, and we'll be able to play with it in unlimited ways. So what I recommend that you have a go at now is think, okay, how could I create a basic form, a basic web page where I can get the user to put something in and I can do something with it, something of interest. So have a go at that, and then I'll be providing a few practicals where you can get some more experience, and then we'll go over the results in future lectures.